Përshëndetje, zonja e zotrin, jeni me televizion 21. Sot jemi bashkë me ambasadorën amerikane, zonjën Anģela Agелер, që ne falenderojmë shumë dhe për këtë arsye do të flas në anglisht. Madam Ambassador, welcome to our humble home. Thank you very much for your presence.
Thank you so much, Famir. What a beautiful studio. I'm really happy to be here with you today.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. I'm sorry you haven't seen it earlier, but I'm glad we have you here. Madam Ambassador, now and then in Skopje, what do you make of the Republic?
These are interesting times. It's a time of great change. Okay. I have, as you know, I have served here in Skopje before and have been back now for almost a year and a half. And I believe very honestly that this is a pivotal time for this country. With elections coming up, the issues are so compelling, and they really require, I think, journalists like you to have honest, frank discussions so that the public, the citizens, can really try and understand what the issues are, what the platforms of the various political parties are, and make some really important decisions. Because I believe that the future path of this country is going to be decided in many ways by the coming election.
By the coming elections. Well, in our last conversations, you were crystal clear on corruptions, and you even called it a pandemic. Why so?
Corruption?
Yeah.
Well, it's an epidemic, I believe. It's a cancer in this country. I believe that those who engage in corrupt acts, I was thinking about this morning, are thieves. I believe that they are stealing from this country and from its citizens.
Taxpayers' money.
Exactly, and it's not just money. I believe that they are stealing opportunity. Yes. I believe that they are stealing, in many instances, hope, and that the people of this country deserve to have honest leaders, honest business endeavors and entrepreneurs, and that they deserve accountability from not only those they elect, but those that provide them with the services that they deserve here in this country.
But how come no one cares, Madam Ambassador?
I don't
on
think...
the way how the taxpayers' money is spent, how it ends up in politicians' pockets.
Well, I believe people do care. And what I have observed is...
people do, but politicians don't.
Well, I believe there are some. I believe there are some who do care and would make a change. It's very difficult. One thing that I have...
Very simple, why difficult?
It's simple
You stop something that's wrong.
Because it is so completely systemic. If you look at how corruption has crept into almost every sector of society here, into every part of government, into every part of business, in the everyday lives of individuals here in North Macedonia, people come across corruption.
Why do we talk so much about corruption and we don't see that much on corruption cases?
Yeah, because
or corrupt people?
It takes courage. And I have observed, I know this is obnoxious to some people. I talk about it a lot. I talk about it because I think it has to be addressed. Sure, and it's one of those aspects that people talk about it, and yet there's a sense of resignation.
Impunity, rather impunity than resignation, madam. Why? People are so tough that no one can touch them. Even if we're talking about corruptions at the lower levels.
Right.
Why?
Well, I think, first of all, that's a question for, and now is a great time to be asking that, because we have elections coming up.
We have that every election.
There's a saying in the United States that in a democracy, people get the government they deserve.
They deserve, I know.
And it requires people to get out and vote, to ask hard questions, and to hold people accountable. To say, and that's true also when I say people, I also mean people who work within the government, within the judiciary.
So people is people,
regardless of it. And they're citizens.
Did we deserve the SPO?
were they elected?
They were not. They were chosen by the parliament.
Right.
But they were not elected.
There has to be a process.
Yes.
Whereby individuals are held accountable. And that requires, even within the judiciary, that there are prosecutors, judges, investigators, law enforcement who say, wait, enough. This is wrong, and I'm not going to be a part of it. It has to start with that.
But why it failed then? We heard them talking so much about fighting corruption at the SPO, but why it failed then? I mean, you've seen a lot of money being invested in judiciary. Yourself, U.S. taxpayers' monies. I don't know the numbers. I apologize. Yes.
Yeah.
I was about to say hundreds of millions of dollars. And yet the results, we still talk about it, as we do talk about it today, madam. So it's a lot of money invested, but the results, I mean, you tell me about the results. Is there anyone who, even at the State Department, at the embassy, who is happy with the results we see?
It's an important question, and first of all, I firmly believe you have to talk about it.
Yes, of course.
You can't. We can't be silent.
No, I do.
And one of the things that I appreciate, as you know, the United States has designated more people for sanctions from this country in the last 9 months than we have, I believe, since independence. And so by shining a light on those who would, again, steal from their country and steal from its citizens, it has, I believe, and I have seen, raised the conversation again at a very public level. And when I talk to people who are regular citizens of North Macedonia, they notice and now say, please keep doing this, please more sanctions, and they're paying attention in a way that maybe they had not. Yes,
Madam Ambassador, with all due respect, you have the other side of the medal. There are people saying they made millions. It's nothing if they can't travel to the US. Why should they care? If they still hold their millions, no one holds them accountable for the millions.
Right.
But they just cannot travel to the United States.
Well, look.
I mean, what do you say to those people, which I belong to? I mean, they have millions. Those who you have blacklisted as the, I mean, you apologize, I mean, the US.
No, that's fine.
I didn't mean it. Yeah, that's why I had to explain myself.
I understand completely. And that's something that has been raised by others as well. The fact of the matter is that...
But the fact is they still have the millions. They can just not travel to the States.
Let me finish. The fact of the matter is that this is US law.
Yes.
We don't do it to enforce anything here. This has nothing to do with Macedonian law. It has to do with US law that requires that when we are aware of corrupt activities and corrupt actors, and we have evidence of those corrupt and criminal activities, that we are required, State Department, Treasury Department, Commercial Department, Commerce, to designate them. That's our law. What happens with them here is up to this country and the leaders of North Macedonia.
Yes, but you owe it to the people, madam. It's the people who wants to listen to you. How come we've never seen, I mean, this is a very general question, is how come we've never seen the United States helping the authorities here in giving them all the details?
Well, first of all...
I'm very honest.
Yeah,
I'm very honest.
No, I understand the
because
question.
we're talking, I'm telling you what the people say, not politicians. Forget about the politicians. You know, hundreds of millions, they have hundreds of millions, and no one is, you know, they are guilty by the embassy. They are corrupt. I remember when we talked, they are corrupt 100%. This is how you call them, because otherwise you wouldn't designate them. And here, you know, everyone is free.
I think that's a question for authorities here, don't you?
The issue was, why doesn't the United States tell them that this is what we have, this is what you can prosecute? Because
also, under US law, we have privacy issues. So we cannot simply open up, this is the evidence that we have, and let us share that with you.
I would be very welcome publicly, but I'm saying to the authorities.
Yeah, but let me finish.
Okay.
The point is we have privacy laws, and it would break our laws to open up those cases and to share the evidence. However, that evidence was, most of it, not all of it, some of it came from sources within the United States, but most of it came from here.
From here.
From this country. So if American diplomats...
From your embassy then?
If American diplomats can gather the information that provided sufficient evidence, then surely an investigator or a prosecutor or anybody from law enforcement or the judiciary can find the same evidence. So,
I mean, you know,
if we can find it, then surely people who are here can find it.
We find evidence as well as medias, but at the end of the day, it's just there.
Then that's a question. That's a question for enforcement.
Question all the time.
That's a question for enforcement, and it's a question for prosecutors.
Yes, of course. We ask the prosecutors as well after you publish the sanctions list. But I mean, that's it. That's it. That's it, madam. That's what I'm saying. It's not that we would not want to see the proofs as media, but if there is a privacy issue, is there no gap whatsoever in the law that could exist that you could?
We have very strict privacy laws.
You have,
but we are happy to have.
It's a no-no.
We are happy to have conversations, and the important thing, Fatmir, also, is there is not one single individual since I have been here that we have designated, that Washington has designated, that has surprised anybody in this country.
Now you know why I'm asking you about the millions, since no one is surprised, because they knew, but no one is surprised. Well, but the authorities leave it there. You have even former prime minister who say, I give my full support to this individual, that individual. So
there are elections.
The elections.
Once again, I'll say, you know, this is an opportunity. And at the end of the day, citizens have to demand of their leaders to do something. If citizens insist that investigators investigate, that prosecutors prosecute, that judges make decisions based on the law, then we've really got something.
If the citizens insist, you said. Do they? Besides the media,
they can.
They can, that's what I'm saying. They can, but they aren't.
Listen, I'm an optimist.
No, I'm an optimist as well. I hope to see your blacklist expanded even more, madam, so that we have even more help from the US Embassy, so that we know that we are talking about corruption. It's not that we're just talking about corruption and bringing papers and reports, but you have also.
It's an organic list.
Yes. During the elections, can we see any, or it's not politically viable that we see any new names, designations?
I've said this before, but it is important for people to understand that we do not determine from here in Skopje the timing of designations.
So it might be, we don't know.
And they are not politically driven. Our most recent designation, that had nothing to do with politics. It was when Washington had completed its processes, and that will be the case for future ones. Can I go back to one point that you made, though, about the millions?
Yes, madam.
Not everybody's sanction, type of sanction, is limited to simply not having a visa to the United States.
But I'm telling you, this is the sense that we all, when we talk.
But there are financial designations.
If they have companies or monies abroad, it will be freeze.
They cannot move money through the United States, for example, which is a very big deal when you look at things like the SWIFT system. So there are very real consequences.
Okay, I hope so. I really do hope so that we have an argument more to get it to the top. The accession negotiations with the European Union and the constitutional changes and challenges. Anything new on site that you might share with us?
We're not in the EU. Breaking news. The United States is not in the European Union.
But you and I and all of us do share the same feeling. We need to integrate.
Listen, this country, North Macedonia, is in Europe.
Yes.
It should be in the European Union. It should have complete Euro-Atlantic integration. It should share markets more openly. The future, the bright future of this country lies within the European Union, period.
Period. But the challenges and the constitution will change. Anything new?
Not that I have heard.
No, nor do I.
Not that I have heard. But this is a question that I hope that, again,
during the elections, it will already be raised.
We have elections coming up.
Yes.
And I hope that because I've talked to many, many people who say, I hate the idea that we have to compromise again.
Okay.
We've compromised with the name, we've compromised with the flag, et cetera, et cetera. I'm very unhappy that we're being asked to compromise again with another constitutional amendment. But I still think we need to get into the European Union. And that is the most common view that I have heard from voters, frankly.
Well, from voters as well, but from on the real side, it was the opposition from the Premier who didn't want to make it happen. And now we hear more and more political parties from the Albanian side. Actually, we do have now 2 blocks, which is very fortunate. And they are saying constitution first, government second. Is this new to you?
I've heard that. I've heard a couple of different options for how that might be possible.
How it might work out after the elections.
And
is it feasible?
I believe so. I believe that there have been precedents.
Yes.
Not for decades, I think, but there have been precedents when amendments were passed during technical governments. And so one of the things that I have learned serving here is that all things are possible. And so, look, I'm hopeful because—
So good and bad too.
Well, all things are possible. But I'm very hopeful that leaders, regardless of what they say for political effect, and we're going through elections in the United States as well, so we understand very well that people can say lots of things.
Why should we?
They say lots of things.
Elections, change of presidential
for their voters.
Politics.
But, you know, there's general consensus, including from the leaders of the opposition, that the EU is something that those accession processes, it is something that has to happen. What I hope is that more time is not wasted. Because there are immediate opportunities, including the growth plan and including reforms that are part of the accession process that I think are—
These are the benefits. These are the benefits.
Exactly.
To get to that, we need to have the consent of it.
Right.
So how, if it is political correct, if it has, does it have any diplomatic démarche as to make that possible prior to the government? Have the changes before the government?
You know, that—
Because we might hear after the election, we have pressure from the embassies. They ain't going to name anyone. They usually don't. The opposition usually don't.
I leave that to my good friend, Ambassador Geer.
Why?
Because again—
we are United States, they are EU.
Yeah, and it's not for us—
What about the people trust more the Americans than the Europeans? What about that?
Thank you very much.
I love you too.
I appreciate it. But at the end of the day, we can't make leaders do things because the United States wants them to do it.
Yes, but you make it clear that you wouldn't buy a car from the opposition, for instance.
Well, I never said that.
You never said that, I know.
I don't own a car, so I'm not in the market for a car at the moment.
No, I get that. But you know what I'm saying, because it's the election, I don't want to get involved into the elections.
I think everybody— I urge all voters, and I mean this very seriously, to listen very carefully to what those that are running, not just the heads of opposition and the head of Citizema and the head of UMRO, but the Albanian parties, the MPs, those that are running on the list, listen to them very carefully in how they're describing their vision of the future. Because that's so important to voters. I do that in my country. What are you telling me that tomorrow is going to look like? What does— May 8th, everyone goes and votes. What happens on May 9th and 10th? What does that—
We do ask them for them. We do ask politicians for the voters as well, we do.
And then after you ask those hard questions, then people decide, well, this person's vision matches what I want for my family. This person's ideas make most sense to me.
Your take on the presidential elections, madam, and on the influence that now we hear more and more the Russia might play on the elections itself, be it presidential or parliamentary ones?
You know, in all honesty,
Yes.
I don't have a particular view about the presidential elections. I think it makes a lot of sense that they are having the second round of the presidential elections with the parliamentary elections. That makes great sense.
Yes.
And we'll watch them very closely and see. I think there's very interesting dynamics.
Yes. What does it mean, interesting?
I think there's very interesting dynamics amongst all the parties.
Okay.
I think there's very interesting dynamics amongst the Albanian parties.
Yes.
And with all elections, as we watch that very closely, we also watch closely to see if we perceive that there is foreign interference from Russia or, frankly, from any other actors.
Yes.
And so we will, you know, observe and see and keep track of what's happening to the best we can.
But you will not interfere?
Nope.
Even if you see the interference?
I don't vote here. If you see a vote from Anџela Agler, then there's a problem.
Russian propaganda whatsoever?
I'm sure there is. Listen, the Russians interfered in our last elections.
I know.
And they have, they like very much to spread chaos. And so what form that takes, they have various different
means and friends.
Exactly. And so we'll watch that very closely.
Ladies and gentlemen, Madam Ambassador, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. It was a great honor.
Great to talk.
Great having you here. Zonja e zotëri, e mbyllim, ishim bashkë me ambasadorën Anџela Agjelër të Shtetit Bashkuar të Amerikës për të kuptuar se si e shef ajo gjithë këtë që ne po pritëm. Faleminderit shumë për vëmendjen e shijve pas pak. Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador.